Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting straight into a really dynamic and I think strategically vital sector. India's engineering R&D, product engineering services, and industrial automation scene.
Right.
We're looking at an analysis from Bowrington, India. They're deep in this market.
Right.
And basically we want to pull out the key insights for you, whether you're an investor, a CEO, maybe leading a company in this space.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story how India moved from being, mainly seen as an outsourcing place to a real hub for high-value innovation.
Exactly. How did that happen? That's what we're digging into.
So this overview, it's strategic, high level. We'll look at what's driving the growth, which sectors are really excelling with digital transformation, and the investment side too. Especially interesting for private, mid-sized Indian firms.
Yeah, and the source material.
It's mainly Barrington's recent white paper, plus some other industry analysis.
Okay, great. Let's start with the key piece then. The Bowrington India Private Credit Fund. What's the core idea for global investors looking here? What kind of companies are you targeting?
Sure. The Bowrington India Private Credit Fund, we call it BIPC, it's really about creating value. We do that by originating, so finding, and then managing high-quality private credit investments.
Okay.
And the focus is specifically on mid-sized Indian companies, ones that are ready for some serious growth.
And your team's background?
Well, between us, we have over 80 years of global investment experience, managed, I think, over $10 billion in assets across different markets for top institutions. So this isn't our first rodeo in these kinds of markets.
That definitely sounds like deep experience, but it's a competitive field, right?
Yeah.
What really sets the BIPC fund apart? What's the investing edge?
Yeah, good question. Our edge, well, it's been built up over years through lots of market cycles. We take a really direct, proactive approach to finding deals.
Direct meaning?
Meaning we don't just sit back and wait for brokers to bring us things. We use our long-standing relationships within the Indian business community to find strong investment cases directly, companies where we really think we can unlock value for the promoter, the owner.
So you're actively seeking them out.
Exactly. We see opportunities that maybe others miss because they're waiting for the market to come to them.
Makes sense. And risk.
Yeah.
How do you handle downside protection in such a, dynamic market?
Right. For downside protection, we're quite specific. We actually tend to avoid fixed asset collateral.
Like land or buildings?
Yeah, exactly. Because liquidating those can be slow, and they often get tangled up in, legal issues if things go south.
Okay, so what do you prefer?
We prioritize what we call ring-fenced liquid collateral, things that can be turned into cash relatively quickly.
Like what?
Things like pledges of the promoter's own equity, cash flow escrows, maybe a high-value machinery that's movable, and personal guarantees, too.
Okay.
The key is it offers faster recovery if needed, but more importantly, it aligns the promoter's interests directly with ours. It encourages repayment, builds more of a partnership.
Alignment and liquidity.
Oh, got it.
What about the investment terms themselves? How do you structure these deals for, both safety and good returns?
So, the fund makes privately negotiated performing credit investments, usually structured as debentures, think corporate bonds. They have contractual capital protection, fixed returns.
Standard stuff.
Well, yes, but here's the interesting part, the sweetener, as we sometimes call it. They often include equity kickers.
Equity kicker.
Like warrants giving us the option to buy shares later, or maybe earnings-linked coupons, so our return actually increases if the company's profits go up.
So it's a hybrid approach.
Exactly. It lets us target a pretty strong internal rate of return, IRR, aiming for around 15-20% USD.
You mentioned performing credit.
Crucially, yes. We only focus on companies that are already generating good operating cash flow. They need a clear way to repay us. We actively avoid distressed situations or businesses that aren't generating cash.
So what kind of situations do you target?
It could be providing growth capital for a big expansion, maybe helping with a one-time settlement if a promoter needs capital quickly for something strategic, or navigating complex M&A deals where maybe traditional banks or PE firms aren't the right fit, perhaps because of speed or structure.
So flexible capital for specific growth scenarios.
That's it. Flexible capital, strong risk controls, and that equity-linked upside in a market that's growing really fast.
And that rapidly growing market is exactly where I want to go next. Understanding this whole India, ER&D, PES, and industrial automation landscape really shows why this kind of capital is needed. Can you maybe define these terms for us? ER&D, PES, IA, What are we talking about?
Sure, let's break them down. So ER&D is basically all the R&D work for engineering products and processes, the core innovation bit.
Okay, foundational.
Right. Then PES, product engineering services, that refers to the outsourced services that support those ER&D activities.
Helping out with the R&D.
Exactly. And IA, industrial automation, well, that's using tech like robotics, control systems, IoT, Internet of Things, and AI to automate industrial stuff, making things more efficient. It's often tied to this Industry 4.0 concept.
Right, the smart factory idea.
Precisely. And what's really striking is how fast these sectors have gone from just being lower costs to being real innovation hubs, high-value stuff.
You mentioned subsets driving this.
Yes, two key ones. Digital engineering, DEs, huge. That's using digital tech, AI, cloud, IoT, data analytics to create smart, connected products. Think cars that update themselves or factories predicting maintenance.
Very cool.
And closely related is software product engineering services, SPS. That's focused specifically on engineering software products and platforms. These two, DE and CPs, are really powering this transformation.
And the market growth numbers, I saw some projections. They seem almost unbelievable. What's fueling this kind of expansion?
They are pretty remarkable, aren't they? The Indian ER&D market is projected to hit somewhere between $130 to $170 billion by FY30. Yeah, and that would be like 22% of the global share. The growth rate, the CAGR, is forecast at 16-21%. Compare that to the global ER&D market growing at maybe 8-9%.
So India's growth is double the global rate, roughly.
Pretty much. And a huge chunk of that is driven by digital engineering. DE is expected to be nearly half of all global ER&D spending by 2030. And just the industrial automation piece alone is heading towards nearly $30 billion by 2029.
Incredible numbers. So what does this shift mean for India's value proposition overall? How did it move beyond just being cheaper?
That's the key question. India has clearly pivoted. It's not just about cost arbitrage anymore. It's become a strategic partner for high-value innovation.
What enabled that pivot?
Several things converging, really. First, just huge global demand for ER&D. That global market's heading towards $1.8 trillion by FY30. Second, India's talent pool.
The STEM graduates.
Yeah, graduating around 1.5 million engineers a year. But it's not just volume, it's the skills evolving rapidly in areas like AI, cloud, data. And there's often this, problem-solving mindset, maybe forged in their own dynamic market. That adaptability is key.
More than just labor costs, then.
Definitely. Plus, companies globally are more willing to source and outsource complex work now, especially in industries like automotive, where they face huge internal skill gaps. And finally, digital transformation isn't a nice-to-have anymore.
It's essential.
It's an absolute imperative for companies to survive and compete. They have to develop new digital products and services.
So where are we seeing this transformation most clearly? Which sectors are really leading the way?
You see it deeply across the whole engineering and automation lifecycle, particularly in high-growth areas. Automotive is a big one, especially with EVs and ADAS, the advanced driver assistance systems.
All new car tech.
Right.
Yeah.
And also aerospace and defense, industrial manufacturing. In auto, this whole ACS disruption, autonomous, connected, electric, shared vehicles, that demands completely new skill sets.
Which India seems positioned to provide.
Exactly. Just electrification could drive, say, $35 billion. And softwareization, putting software into everything, maybe another $46 billion in incremental outsourced auto ER&D spending just between 2023 and 2027.
Huge incremental spend.
Massive. And we're seeing growth in pure play ER&D firms, specialized automation and robotics companies, and deep tech investment, defined as, businesses using advanced science or engineering. That doubled in India to $324 million in just the first 4 months of 2025. It's a fundamental shift.
What does the ecosystem look like? Who are the players?
It's quite diverse. You've got the big established IT and ER&D players, TCS, Infosys, HCL, Wipro, Persistent Systems. They offer broad services. Then you have more focused engineering service providers, ESPs. Think L&T Technology Services, KPIT, Tata Elxsi, Tata Technologies, Cyient, often specializing in specific areas like auto or embedded systems. Right. But what's also really exciting is the rise of dynamic, mid-sized innovators. Companies like Adverb in robotics, Gray Orange in warehouse tech, Altizan in industrial IoT, Tessolve in chip design, Mistral in embedded electronics.
The next generation, maybe?
Could be. And underpinning all this, you have over 1,700 global capability centers, GCCs. These are R&D centers set up by global giants like Microsoft, Siemens. They really solidify India's role as a global hub, and bring in high-value work.
Okay, so a very layered ecosystem. Now, for investors listening, the financial performance, what does that look like for companies in this space?
It's quite strong, actually. If you look at the listed Indian companies in these subsectors, they typically show high profitability, attractive margins.
Can you have some numbers?
On average, you're seeing around 18% ROE, return on equity, and about an 18% EBIT margin earnings before interest and taxes. So solid profitability.
And growth.
Impressive growth, too. An average 5-year net income growth of around 123%, and average 5-year revenue growth around 102%.
Wow, doubling revenue in 5 years on average.
Yeah, it really highlights the wealth generation potential, especially, again, for those mid-sized private firms that can use investment capital effectively to capture this growth.
It paints a very positive picture. But let's be balanced. Every growth story has challenges. What are the headwinds? What are the main obstacles facing India's ER&D sector?
That's crucial to consider. The biggest one, honestly, is the talent gap, specifically in those high-demand digital skills, AML, cloud, data science, cybersecurity.
The skills gap again?
Yes. India graduates a lot of engineers, but there's a real need to upskill maybe 1.4 to 1.9 million of them by 2026 to meet the future demand for these specialist roles.
And competition for that talent.
Intense, especially from those GCCs we mentioned. They can often pay top dollar for niche skills, which drives up costs.
Okay, talent gap is number one. What else?
Well, there's the sheer pace of technological change. Obsolescence is rapid. Indian firms need to constantly innovate to stay competitive beyond just cost. They need to focus more on creating their own intellectual property, owning products.
Moving up the value chain?
Precisely. And then there are underlying factors like infrastructure limitations, although that's improving fast, and the regulatory landscape, which is always evolving and requires navigation.
So these challenges aren't insignificant, but maybe they also represent opportunities for investment, for collaboration.
Absolutely. They highlight areas where strategic effort is needed to unlock the sector's full potential. The transformation isn't complete, it's very much ongoing.
Right.
Looking ahead, India's ER&D sector really feels like it's at an inflection point. It's on a clear path to becoming, well, an indispensable part of the global innovation engine, but continued focus on talent, on the innovation ecosystem, on global links. That's going to be critical.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've really only scratched the surface, but we've touched on that huge strategic shift, the compelling growth, and this ecosystem that seems ripe for investment, particularly for those mid-sized firms.
Definitely. And if you're listening, maybe you're a professional investor, a CEO, a company leader in this area, and these ideas connect with your own strategy, we genuinely encourage you to get in touch.
Yes, to get more detail and explore how the Bowrington India Private Credit Fund might fit with your investment plans or your company's growth needs, please do reach out. We can share the full white paper, set up an introductory chat.
You can contact Anand Bhattapati, that's ABATEPATI at Bowrington.com, or Swapnil Dhotri, SDHOTRE at Bowrington.com, or Raj Thamani, RTHAMMINENI at Bowrington.com.
We'll make sure those details are available.
Or maybe a final thought to leave you with. In a world that's just flooded with information, constant change, how could really targeted strategic investments in this next frontier of global engineering, how could that truly define competitive advantage for forward-thinking capital?
A powerful question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We look forward to continuing the conversation.